Good morning, students. Welcome to the lecture of Real Analysis 1. In the last lecture, we have started a new unit, unit number 4 of the syllabus, implicit function and extremum problem. We have seen in detail how this implicit function works, okay, and why there is a need to study the implicit function. Because we know that every implicit function cannot be expressed in explicit form in an easy manner. For that, we need some conditions. Okay. Also, we have seen the notation, or rather, we are going to use the notation j of x. Okay, this notation we were going to use in order to denote the determinant of the Jacobian matrix. But here we should take the function is of the type Rn to Rn, because we are interested in finding the determinant. Therefore, the corresponding Jacobian matrix must be a square matrix. That's why here we are taking the dimensions of dominant codomain space to be same. And the notation for the determinant of a Jacobian matrix we were using Jf of x, or one can use this symbol also, dou of f1 f2 fn to dou of x1 x2 xn. And also we have seen what is the use of the Jacobian we have made in order to change the variables in one dimension space, in two dimension space and three dimension space also. Let us go to a theorem we have studied in the last lecture. The important theorem we have studied is whenever f is given to be a complex valued function with a derivative at point z and c, then it was asked us to prove that Jacobian determinant, or the Jacobian jf of z is mod of dash of z bracket square. We have seen the proof in detail. Actually, we have started with the function, we have found its derivative, then we have found its modulus, and we have called it as equation number 1. Then we have written the Jacobian determinant, and by just using the Cauchy-Riemann equations, we have proved the required result. Now, in today's lecture, we are going to understand some properties of the functions having non-zero Jacobian determinant. Actually, these theorems, or these are some two more theorems, will help us to understand the important theorem called as an implicit function theorem. In this theorem, we were going to understand that under which conditions every implicit form of function how it can be written in the explicit form. Therefore, under this heading of functions with non-zero Jacobian determinant, we will study some properties of the functions with non-zero Jacobian determinant. Let me write. This section deals with some properties of functions with non-zero Jacobian determinant. Very interesting, and the first property under this we will start non-zero Jacobian determinant at certain points. Actually, this was our theorem number 2 in this unit. Let me write the statement of this. Statement is somewhat lengthy. Okay, let us try to understand the statement first. What the statement says. Let B is equal to B of AR. What is the meaning of the symbol? Am I audible to the students?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
This B is the n ball in an RNS space. Okay, dou B denotes its boundary. Dou B denote its boundary. Because whenever we were considering an n ball, we were not considering this to be along with its boundary, because it's an open set, right? No. Therefore, what dou B is? Dou B, let me define. It is a collection of all x such that norm of x minus a is exactly equals to r. Correct? Now, whenever this will be less than r, it will be all the interior points of the ball. Here we are considering exactly the boundary points. And B bar denotes, or let B bar is, B bar equals to B union dou B. B union dou B means ball along with its boundary points. Denote its closure. Let me call it as closure. Denote its closure. Next, a function f is given, no doubt an n-tuple function, multi-value, where every coordinate function we were writing as f1, f2 up to fn be continuous. It was given to be a continuous function on this b bar, b along with its boundary, and assume that all partial derivatives, all the partial derivatives dj f(x) exist. What is the meaning of dj f(x) exist? This is for if x is belonging to b. All partial derivatives exist means we have studied already that the total derivatives are written in terms of their partial derivatives. Therefore, if all partial derivatives are going to exist, means one can say that the function is totally differentiable, and that the Jacobian is non-zero, because the property we were going to study for non-zero Jacobian determinant. Jacobian JF at the point x is not equals to 0 for each x in B. For each x in B, then prove that. Now here it comes the statement to prove. Then prove that f of B, comma, the image of B under F contains an n ball with center at f of a. Okay, we will try to understand the statement, what are the given things, and then we will come to the statement which what we want to prove. Initially, this B is given to be an n ball in an n-dimensional space. That is, it is an open ball in an Rn space. Dou B denotes its boundary. For the boundary, we have written to be norm of collection of all x which are at a distance r from the point A, where A is the center of this ball. And let B bar denotes B along with its boundary, be its closure, and F is a multi-valued, that is having each coordinate function to be f1 to fn, is given to be a continuous function on this whole closure, that is B bar. And also it is given that all partial derivatives exist for all the points on the ball B. Partial derivatives exist, it gives an indication that the function is total derivable. That, and also it is given that the Jacobian determinant is non-zero for all the points in the ball. And now we want to prove that f of B, whatever is the f image of this ball under the given function, then its f image is going to contain an n ball with center at f of A. Let me show you graphically what these statements want to mean. Okay. I think I have skipped one point in the statement itself. I'll just correct the statement where I have skipped djfix exist and f of x is not equal to f of A if x belongs to dou B. Yes, I skipped this point. F of x is not equal to f of A if x belongs to dou B. I will explain you what is the meaning of this statement later. Okay, let us try to understand what this theorem, what this proof want to tell us. Okay, what is given to us? Whatever is the domain is some subset of an n-dimensional space. Now what we were going to do? We were going to draw one circle. Okay, let this be an open sphere B of A comma R. Let me write the center of this ball to be some A, and what is the radius? Radius be some R. and let us take an arbitrary point x on the boundary. What is the boundary? This is the boundary, no? This is the boundary. And what about interior? All these points inside will be the interior, right? Now what we were going to do? We were going to apply a function f on this. We are going to apply a function f on this. What will be the f image of this open ball? We are not sure that whether the f image of an open ball is an open ball. It may be of any shape. Therefore, let me draw one sketch of any shape, and let me write this is f image of our open ball. Note that we are in n-dimensional space to n-dimensional space. Now we want to prove that this image f of b under f contains an n ball. So this contains an n ball again, and what is that n ball? This contains an n ball with center at f of a. What is the center of this ball? The center of this ball is f of a. This we want to prove. F of b contains an n ball whose center is at f of a. This is what a simple fact we want to prove. Now, in order to prove this, let us try to use all the things one by one. F is given to be continuous on B bar. Also, it is given that F is differentiable on B. Okay. Also, it is given that the Jacobian determinant is non-zero on B. The last point here, it was mentioned that f of x is not equals to f of a if x belongs to dou B. We will try to understand the meaning of the statement. Okay. And meaning of this statement. Before that, what we were going to do, in order to prove the required result, we were going to define a new function, say g. We were going to define a new function g. Okay, just wait, my pen tablet is not working. What the function we will define? We will define g to be a real valued function on the boundary of this ball. Define. So purely a construction. With the help of f, we are going to define a new real valued function. Define a real valued function g on the boundary of the ball. Okay, as how it is going to be defined? This g of x is defined to be norm of fx minus f of a. Norm of fx minus f of a. What is the meaning of norm? Norm is actually a distance between the 2 points. For the sake of convenience, let me consider the distance to be by a shortest path, that is a straight line joining the 2 points. It is not a compulsion that it could be by the straight line joining the 2 points, but in order to understand the theorem, let me write this is the straight distance between the 2 points. Let this be an arbitrary point x, f of x for x on the boundary. A point x on the boundary of a ball I have taken, and let me assume that the f image be somewhere here in f of b. Now we were interested in taking the distance between f of x and f of a. What is the distance between f of x and f of a then? Is it the distance between the 2 points fx and f of a? As I told you, we were going to consider the shortest distance between the 2 points, and that's why this is the real valued function, because this distance is always a scalar number. Now what we were going to claim, that this g of x is a positive number. Why it is positive? Let me assume. What is given? Now let me use this condition. Says f of x is not equal to f of a for the points on the boundary. Correct? No, this is the statement. Now f of x is not equals to f of a for the points on the boundary. Now what is the relation? What is this point A? The point A is actually the center of the ball. Therefore, this is not on the boundary. Therefore, x is not equals to A is the sure thing. Therefore, may I write f of x is not equal to f of a for x not equal to A, because A is the center of the ball. A is the center of B and x is the point on the boundary. Therefore, surely these two are not equal. F of x is not equal to f of a for x not equal to a. Therefore, as f of x is not equal to f of a, therefore, and we are considering the norm value, and we know norm is always non-negative. Norm is always non-negative. F of x is f of x minus f of a not equal to 0. F of x minus f of a is not equals to 0 for all x not equals to 0 means it may take some non-zero vector or some non-zero vector actually. And what is the distance of a non-zero vector from the origin? It has to be non-zero, correct? Not rather positive. Therefore, may I write this g of x is greater than 0 for x belongs to dou b. Is everyone getting me? Distance between the 2 points fx and fa, where f of x minus f of a is a non-zero vector. Okay. Therefore, what about its distance? The distance must be greater than 0, positive distance. No, here is the same some short sketch I will show you. This is a non-zero vector, say a, in a two-dimensional space. Then what is the distance of this vector from the origin? Nor a greater than 0. No, actually we were writing norm a greater equal by 0, including the possibility a is a zero vector. But for a non-zero vector, norm a is always positive. Therefore, we were getting g of x to be a positive function rather. Okay, if you are getting a difficulty at any stage, you can just stop me and ask. Okay, if g of x is positive, any doubt about this? Now,
No, ma'am.
good. Next point, we were going to claim that g is a continuous function. Also, g is continuous on dou b. Why g is continuous? If I look to this statement, g of x is equal to norm of fx minus fa, this is actually a composition of two functions. Which two function? Norm composed with fx minus fa. Norm composed with fx minus fa. What is f given to us? F is given to be continuous, no? F is given to be continuous. Then what about fx minus fa? It is just a translation, no? It is just a translation. As it is just a translation of original function, therefore this function is also continuous. What about norm? We know norm is always a continuous function. Then what about the composition of two continuous function? Composition of two continuous function is a continuous function. Therefore, here we can claim that g is continuous on dou b since f is continuous on b bar. Continuous on b bar means it is continuous on dou b as well. Is everyone getting me? Here I will write norm is continuous function and f is continuous function on dou b, I'll write on dou b, and g is composition of the composition of norm and f. What is the composition of continuous function? Composition of two continuous function is a continuous function. Okay. Next point I will use that this whatever dou b we have considered is compact space. Correct? Now what is compact? Since dou b is compact. Why dou b is compact? What is the definition of compactness? Yes, students? Hello? Hello, students. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
What is compact then? Closed and bounded, no? Closed and bounded. What is dou b? Dou b is the boundary of the set B, and no doubt this boundary is always closed, and as it is the boundary of an open ball with fixed radius, it has to be bounded always. Therefore, continuous function defined on a compact space is again bounded. If it is bounded, one can say that g takes its minima. Since dou b is compact, g takes its absolute minima. G takes its absolute minimum. I will call the minimum value to be some m somewhere on dou B. Okay, let me write the statement. What is the compactness? Whatever I am writing in red pen is not necessary to include in the proof. Inner-Borel theorem, I think if you remember, what it says, every closed and bounded,
Totally bounded.
yeah, totally bounded or bounded, is set in Rn is compact. And continuous function defined on a compact space is bounded again. Many facts of real analysis we were using actually. Okay, now as we are saying G takes its minimum, call it as M. Therefore, let me assume there exists some point on the boundary for which this minima occurs. Therefore, may I say, thus there exists some point Fz in Fb such that norm of Fz minus Fa is equal to M for some point Z in the on the boundary. Let us come to the sketch again to understand this. We were saying G takes its minimum. Now what I will do, I will take one point Z on the boundary. Okay, the corresponding image of this Z, let it be somewhere here, Fz in F of B, and the distance between this F of Z and F of A is the minimum distance, and this distance we are going to call as M. Okay, see what we have written. There exists a point Fz in Fb such that norm of Fz minus Fa is equals to M for some Z on the boundary. For some Z on the boundary. Therefore, whatever is this distance we have obtained between Fz and Fa, this will be M, and this will be the minimum value of our function G defined. And why this minima occurs? Minima occurs knowing that this is the continuous function defined on a compact space, hence it is bounded. It is bounded means it has lower bound and upper bound, therefore one can have the minima value. Now we were going to find out one open ball around F of A with radius less than M by 2. With radius less than M by 2. Okay. So therefore another circle we want to draw actually. Okay. M by 2 means the radius of half of this radius. Whatever this M, we will take the radius with half. Okay. Is the point clear to everyone? Now I am going to draw a circle again, whose center is again F of A. I'm taking the wrong positions to draw circle. I'll take like this. Yeah. I don't look like a sphere centered at F of A, but you just be with me. It is better to draw by hand only. Yeah, is this sphere is visible to you? This is with center at
Yes,
F of A, radius M by 2. Now what is the job to show? Let me call it as some T. T is a ball, center at F of A, radius M by 2. Now in order to, now what is the job? We will show that this T is in F of B. If this T is in F of B, the proof will be over. That is, the F of B, this F of B contains an open ball centered at F of A. No matter what is the radius. Whatever is this sphere we have taken is a ball with center at F of and radius M. Now we have drawn another ball with same center but radius less than the previous one. That is exactly half rather. Okay, now the job is to show that this T is in F of B. In order to show this T in F of B, what we will do? We will take one arbitrary point, say Y. one arbitrary point, say y in a t, and we will show that the same y is in f of b. Once we do this, it will be proved that this t is contained in f of b. The same we were using in order to show the inclusion relation in case of sets, no? Subsets rather. Okay, is the point clear to everyone? If the sketch is understood, then one can understand the proof of this theorem. Okay, now what I will do, as we have selected the distance m to be shortest distance, or rather a minima for the function g, Okay, now we will note that m is greater than 0, no doubt, because g is greater than 0. This is actually a what is the value? This is g of z, na? Because g of x we have defined norm of fx minus fa, correct? G of x we have defined norm of fx minus f, and here we were writing norm of fz minus fa. Therefore, this is gz, and we know g is always having a value greater than 0. Therefore, this m is also greater than 0 since g is positive. Since g is positive. Okay. Now I will take t. Let capital T denotes the n ball. Now what is that n ball we were taking? T is equal to an open ball centered at f of n. What is the radius we have taken? Radius we have taken to be m by 2. It is not essential to take a radius m by 2. It was just to prove the required result. Therefore, we will take the radius less than the radius of our previous ball. Okay. Now this ball we have taken. Then what is my claim? What we want to prove now? What is the claim to show that this t is contained in f of b? If we show that, this will prove our required result, that f of b, the image of b under f contains a n ball with the center at f of a. With center at f of a. Okay. Now to prove this, what we will do? It is enough to prove. It is enough to prove. What is enough to prove? We will start with y is in t, and it is enough to prove that this y is in f of b. Correct, no? Just like the way we were proving a is a subset of b. How we were proving a is a subset of b? We were proving x is in a implies x is in b. Correct, no? The same logic we were using here. Now, in order to show y is in f of b, what it means actually? Let me write it in different. To prove y is in f of b, what y belongs to f of b, we should prove, or we prove that y is f image of some point c. Correct, na? Y is f image of some point c where c is in b. Okay, but both are the vectors in an n-dimensional space. How we were proving the two vectors are same? How we were proving these two vectors are same? Coordinate wise equality we have to prove now. That is yi is equal to fic for I equals to 1 to n. How we are writing the vector y here? We were writing the end of a vector y as y equals to yn to y1 to yn. And now I am writing f of c. This is f1c, f2c, dot up to fnc. These are both the vectors in an n-dimensional space. So these are the vectors in n-dimensional space. Therefore, in order to prove the two vectors are same, no doubt we have to go by coordinate-wise equality of both the vectors. Therefore, we will start with a fixed vector y in t, and we will show that y is equal to f of c or yi is equal to fi of c. Okay, is the point clear? What to prove? How to prove is the later job. One should be clear with the assumption, and one should be clear with the statement what we want to prove actually. I hope there is no difficulty up to this construction. Shall I proceed then? Now again, in order to prove this yi is equal to fic, we were going to take help of a new real valued function, say h. For this, first we will fix up the vector y. Choose a point y belongs to t and keep y fixed. We will fix y once and then we will go for its f image. Now we are going to define a new real valued function. Define a new real valued function h on b bar as. How I am going to define c? H of x is equal to, now it is the distance between f of x and y. For x in b bar. For x in b bar. Let us check how this sketch tells us what is f of x and y. Where is f of x? For any arbitrary x, here is my f of x. F of x is any point in this f of b. Y is this vector we have fixed out. Now which distance we were considering? F of x and y. The distance between f of x and y is considered now. Correct now? Again, for the sake of convenience, let me take a distance by a straight line. This pink color line is now my new function, say h. Okay. Again, this function is continuous mode out, defined on a compact space similar to g, because again h is defined to be a composition of norm and f of x minus y. F of x is continuous, y is a fixed vector, therefore again this works like a translation. I hope you are familiar with the translation function. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Now here I am claiming again h to be continuous on the compact set b bar. Okay, continuous on compact means again it is bounded and hence it attains its minima. Hence h attains its absolute minima. Now we were going to find out the relation between minima of g and minima of this h again. Okay. Now which statement we have used here? Continuous function on compact set is bounded. Okay. Therefore, as h is bounded, its minimum exists as we have used for g. Okay. Now the job we will show that h attains its minimum somewhere in the open ball, not on the boundary. Okay. Now the aim is we will show that h attains its minima somewhere inside the open ball b of AR, not on the boundary. In order to show this, what we will do, we will find out the value of this h function at the center of the ball, because at the center it will be easier for to find, and then we will find out its value on the boundary. We will compare both h values inside the point and on the boundary. Whichever gives the minima will prove the result. Okay. Here the job is to show that we will show that h attains its minimum somewhere in h attains minima somewhere in the open ball or open end ball b of A comma R, that is not on its boundary. It is on inside the open ball, not on the boundary. Now first what we will do, we will try to find the value of h at the center. Okay. Therefore at the center we have, what is the value of this h at the center? So what is the center? A is the center of the sphere. So what is h we have defined? Norm of fx minus y. Therefore, what is the distance? Norm of FA and Y. Look at the sketch and tell me what is the distance between FA and Y. Y is the 1 point in T. T is an open ball. What is T? T is a ball center with center at F of A and radius m by 2. And Y is the point in T. Y belongs to T. T is an open ball with this. Then what is the distance between Y and F of A in terms of m?
M by 2.
Inside we are saying that if it is on the
Less
boundary
than
of
M
your
by
T, yes, it is less than m by 2. Okay, so for me I write like this, less than m by 2 directly. Less than m by 2. What is the reason? Since y is in T, no? T itself is a ball with radius m by 2. Okay, therefore at the center we have found the value. Now let us find the value somewhere on the boundary and we will show that the minima will be in the inside part, at the inside. Okay, hence the minimum value of H, the minimum value of H in B bar must also be less than m by 2. Correct now? The value on the boundary rather should be less than m by 2. Therefore, let us start with 1 point on the boundary and we will check the value. But at each point x on the boundary, we have what will be the value? H of x we were trying to find out, which is actually norm of fx minus y. Okay, for proving the result, let me do a small adjustment. I will write this as, I will just add and subtract f of a. Therefore, this is fa plus minus fa plus fa minus y. Right? Purely an adjustment I have done. Okay, then let me just separate the 2 points as fx minus fa. Here I want to separate as y minus fa with negative. Okay, now we will prove. Okay, do we have a do you know the relation between this norm x minus y and norm x norm y? Do you know this?
Yes, ma'am.
What is the relation actually? Suppose I want to find out norm x. Okay, then it can be written as norm of x minus y plus y, which is actually less than by norm of x minus y plus norm of y. Triangular inequality, no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, therefore if I just shift this norm x to the left, what it gives us? Norm of x minus norm of y is less than or equals to norm of x minus y. Correct now? Now I am going to use this statement for norm of x minus y. Then norm of x minus y is greater or equal by norm x minus norm y. Correct now? Let us just use this result to write h of x is now greater or equal by norm x minus norm y. That is norm of fx minus fa minus norm of fa minus y. I changed this negative sign also because of this fact. What is the fact? Norm of minus x is mod of minus 1 into norm of x, no? But what is norm of mod of minus 1 is plus. Okay, these are some properties of norm function we were using in order to prove the required result. What is fx minus fa? This is our function g, no? And what is fa minus y? Just we have found is less than by m by 2. What about negative quantity? Negative norm fa minus y, is it greater by m by 2? Therefore, may I write this as strictly greater, not greater equal. Okay, are you getting me or not? fa, norm of fa minus y less than m by 2. This we have proved. Let us multiply by the negative on both the sides. Therefore, negative norm of f a minus y is strictly greater by minus m by 2. Correct? Now, this is what I have used here. Therefore, h of x we have proved to be greater than g of x minus m by 2. Now, how can I make a conclusion about this? Okay. What is known to us? What we know? G of x is greater or equal by m because m is its minimum value. Therefore, may I write g of x is greater or equal by m by 2 plus m by 2, which in turn can be written as g of x minus m by 2 is greater or equal by m by 2. What about here? I can write as it is already strictly greater. Therefore, h of x is greater, strictly greater by g of x minus m by 2, where this is greater or equal by m by 2. Therefore, what will be my final relation? H of x is strictly greater by m by 2 for x to be a point on the boundary. For x to be a point on the boundary. Therefore, inside the sphere, we have proved the value less than m by 2. On the boundary, we have proved the value of h to be greater than m by 2. Therefore, where is the minima obtained? Whether inside the ball or on the boundary. H attains a value less than m by 2 inside B. Inside B. Also, we have proved H attains a value greater than m by 2 on boundary. Where is the minima obtained? The minima is obtained inside a B only. Correct, no? Thus, may I write minimum of H occurs on inside B and not on the boundary. Not on the boundary dou B. Okay. Now, as we have defined a function here whose minima is obtained inside B, now we were going to use the extrema function relation. Okay. Now, what we were going to claim then, hence there is an interior point C at interior point say C in B at which the function h is having its minima. Let me write. Hence, there is an interior point C in the ball B of A comma R at which h attains its minimum. H attains its minimum. Okay. At the same point, may I say the square of h is also going to attain the same minimum value? At this point, square of h, that is h square, also has a minimum. Function has minimum at C, where the function is positive. Therefore, the square is also having the same minima at the same point. Now, h is the function we have obtained, which is distance between fx and y, where it attains its minima inside some point inside the ball at point say C. Okay. Now we were going to make use of this extreme function relation, right? Now, as h attains its minima, we were claiming h square also attains the minima. Therefore, how this h square is being attained? For this, let me write h first. What is h of x we have defined? Norm of fx minus y. Correct, no? How we were giving this norm function? Norm and Rn space. By distance formula we are giving, no? Therefore, this is actually summation r equals to 1 to n frx minus yr bracket square raised to 1 by 2. I think all of you are familiar with this distance formula. We are finding the distance between 2 points in a two-dimensional space. Yes. What is the distance between x and y with the distance formula?
Under root x2 minus x1 bracket square plus y2 minus y1 bracket square.
x2 minus x1, no, this is x1 minus y1. Now, first coordinate subtractions.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it same? Correct. And if we just extend it to an Rn space, what will be the formula? What will be the formula? Under root x1 minus y1 bracket square, x2 minus y2 bracket square, so on xn minus yn bracket square. Correct, no? Now what can I write? How can I write this in terms of summation? This is a summation, no? Finally, sum of squares of the coordinates, difference of the coordinates, right? Therefore, in terms of summation, how can I write it? This is summation xi minus yi square. Sum is running I equals to 1 to n, and this is whole thing raised to 1 by 2 square root it is, no? This is the distance formula for a norm function. The same I have used here, no? Norm of fx minus y is summation. What is the difference between the coordinates of fx and y? Already we have written the coordinate somewhere. It's the coordinate y we have written for y, y1 to yn. Here I have written y1 to yn. What for fc, f1c, f2c, up to fnc. Therefore, what for the rp coordinate? This is frc minus yr. Correct, no? Any doubt up to this?
No,
Okay,
ma'am.
No, ma'am.
now evaluating a root gives us, it may give us a trouble. Therefore, we'll just square on both the sides. Whatever I am writing in red ink, you should not include it in the proof, right? This is for the sake of your understanding. Therefore, what about h square x? Just we'll take a square on both the sides so that it gives us norm square of fx minus y, which is equal to summation r equals to 1 to n frx minus yr bracket square. Now this h square function attains minima. What is the condition for the minima? In the last lecture, I told you to do this homework actually, finding the extrema for the one variable function. Here it is not of one variable, actually this is a n variable function, which is the real valued function of n variables. Therefore, if it attains its minima at the point say C, then may I say the first partial derivatives are 0?
Yes,
All
ma'am.
first partial derivatives
Yes, ma'am.
are 0. Therefore, what is the first partial derivative of h square? Since each partial derivative dk h square must be 0, correct, na? Must be 0 at C. Why? Because h square attains its minima at C. That's why the partial derivatives must be 0. Okay, what is the partial derivative then? What is dk h square? First partial derivative. How will you obtain this? At the point C, it is 0, na? Therefore, may I write dk h square at the point C? Partial derivative we were taking with respect to kth variable xk say. How should I write it? Summation as it is. Shall I keep summation as it is? R equals to 1 to n square of this. This is 2 times actually. 2 times frc minus yr into partial derivative of this bracket. What is the partial derivative of this bracket? This is dk fr at the point C. Yr gives me 0 is equal to 0 for k equals to 1 to n. Here it is 2, no, actually 2 times square is there. But let me just shift this 2 to the right and just cancel it. Is that okay? What we have obtained?
Yes, ma'am.
This is the system of equation for every k equals to 1 to n. Na? If you run up the sum here over r, what is our value for r equals to 1? This is f1c minus y1, correct? At the point dk f1c added with f2c minus y2 into dk f2c. Continue up to n. This is fnc minus yn into dk fn at the point c is equal to 0. Correct now? This is the equation. And how many such equations do we have? N equations? N equations in n variables. So which are the variables here? These are the variables. f1c, f2c up to fnc. These are the variables. Therefore, may I write this is a system of simultaneous, rather it's a homogeneous system. Homogeneous linear equation system in n variables. But this is a system of linear homogeneous equations. Homogeneous equations with variables. What is the variable? f1c minus y1, f2c minus y2, so on up to fnc fnc minus y. Correct? No? N equations we have obtained. Shall I write all those n equations? For every k I have to write dk. Here first for k equal to 1 this is d1, d1, d1. Then for k equal to 2 this is d2 and so on. This will be the system of n equations. Okay. Now what about the system we know? If I have a system of n equations of this type, determinant matrix A into matrix X is equal to 0. When the system possesses the solution,
Determinant A not equal to 0.
good. Determinant A not equals to 0. What will be a determinant here in our system of equations? The determinant will contain all partial derivatives, no?
Yes, ma'am.
And what about those partial derivatives? System, that bracket or what we say, what the matrix, will it be a Jacobian matrix or not? I think it is better to write the system. I will write the system in a red color pen. Okay. For k equals to 1, what is the system? f1c minus y1 into d1 f1c plus f2c minus y2 d1 f2c, so on fnc minus yn into d1 fnc is equal to 0. Let me write one more. f1c minus y1 d2 f1c plus f2c minus y2 d2 f2c plus so on fnc minus yn d2 fnc is equal to 0. What will be my nth equation? f1c minus y1 dn f1c plus f2c minus y2 dn f2c plus fnc minus yn dn Fn C is equal to 0. So what is the determinant of coefficient? What is the coefficient matrix here?
n cross n
Now,
matrix.
what is the matrix?
D1 F1C D2.
Yes, good. This is D1 F1C, D1 F2C, dot up to D1 FNC. Correct, no? For second row, D2 F1C, D2 F2C, so on, Dn Fn at the point C. Last row, let me write Dn F1C, Dn F2C, and Dn Fnc. Right? And what is the matrix of variables? Which is the system of the type Ax is equal to 0, no? What is the first variable? F1C minus y1. Second variable F2C minus y2. So on. Last variable is Fnc minus yn. Is equal to 0, 0, dot up to 0. Therefore, this is of the type determinant A into determinant X is equal to 0. And we know this system possesses a solution only if determinant A is not equal to 0. Therefore, what is determinant A in this case? This A is a Jacobian matrix. Therefore, determinant A will be a Jacobian determinant. And what is given in the statement itself? In the statement, it is given that Jacobian determinant is non-zero. Let us come to the statement again. Here it is given that the f of x is not equals to 0 for all x in the domain B. Right? Therefore, here may I write this system of linear equation. What is the nature of the solution then? Determinant of A is not equal to 0. What is the nature of solution then? Here if this determinant A not equals to 0, then what is the nature of solution? What kind of solution this system will possess? Trivial solution, na? Multiply
Yes,
both
ma'am.
sides by A inverse. Here I will multiply both sides by A inverse. What will happen? As determinant A is non-zero, A inverse exists. Let us multiply. Therefore, to the left we will get identity into X. To the right, A inverse into 0 is 0, na? Therefore, determinant X we will get as a 0 matrix. Therefore, the system will possess a trivial solution. Therefore, here I will write, whether I have written this is the system of linear equations, yes, with variables where the determinant of the coefficient matrix is Jacobian determinant Jf of x, which is non-zero. Correct, na? This is given to be as non-zero. Therefore, may I say the system will possess a trivial solution. System will possess a trivial solution. What is the meaning of a trivial solution? All the variables are 0, na? What are the variables? Is it FRC minus YR is equal to 0 or R equals to 1 to N? Check what are my variables. Variables are F1C minus Y1, F2C minus Y2 up to FNC minus Yn is equal to 0. All the variables are 0, proving YR is equal to FRC, where these are coordinate-wise equality of the two vectors y is equal to f of c. Actually, we have started with what we have. Y is a vector we have taken in T, where we have proved y is equal to f of c. Therefore, may I write y is in f of b. Y is in f of b. If y is in f of b, what we have proved? Y is in t implies y is in f of b. Therefore, we have proved t is contained in f of b. That is, this f of b contains, this implies f of b contains an open ball T. What open ball T with center at, what is the center of this T?
f of a.
Yes, with center at f of a, and hence it is the proof. Hence it is the proof. Somewhat lengthy construction it is. Okay, let me tell you from the starting itself. Right? Okay, initially we have started with what are the assumptions given? B along with its boundary is the domain considered. F is a continuous function assuming all partial derivatives exist. Jacobian determinant is non-zero. F of x is not equals to 0 for all the points x on the boundary. And f of b, we want to prove that f of b, this image of b, okay, this image of b contains an n-ball center at f of x. For this, first we have defined a function g, real valued function defined on n-dimension space, which is actually a distance between fx and fa. Which is actually a distance between fx and fa. Okay. Then we have proved that this g is a continuous function. Continuous function defined on a compact set. Hence, it is the bounded. It is bounded means it has to assume its minima. Therefore, g assumes its minima. We have assumed this as some m. Therefore, there exists a point z on the boundary for which the minima exists. Once we find the minimum distance between the 2 points fx and fa, we have marked it at the point z. Then later, assuming as this m exists, we will take a open ball centered at f of a and distance less than m by 2. This distance less than m, let it be m by 2. Then we have assumed this to be a open sphere T, center at m, radius less than m, which we have actually taken to be m by 2. Then we have defined one more real valued function, distance between fx and y. Now the job we have done, again this h is defined on n-dimensional spaces, real valued function. H is continuous because it is the composition of norm and continuous function f. Hence continuous function defined on a compact space, it is bounded. It is bounded means h has to assume its minima. Once h will assume its minima, we have proved that h attains its minima inside the ball, not on the boundary. Therefore, inside the ball, we have assumed a point C at which h assumes its minima. If h assumes its minima, h square also assumes minima. Y square we have taken because h is the distance between fx and y. And if we write this distance formula, if we write this function by distance formula, it will be in the under root format. Therefore, we have just taken a square function. If h is minima at the point C in the domain B, then h square will also be minima at the same point C. Therefore, h square assumes its minima at the point C. If h square assumes its minima at the point C, then we have taken all first order partial derivatives to be 0. Here, next onwards, we have written everything. Once h square assumes its minima, proving all partial derivatives 0, here we have written h square, we have written its partial derivative as well. And if we just observe, this partial derivative is nothing but the system of linear equations. For every k, there exists one equation. Therefore, this is the system, linear homogeneous system of n variables, n equations in n variable. For your sake of convenience, I have written the system as well. Therefore, this is the coefficient matrix. This is the matrix of variable. This system will possess a solution only if determinant A is non-zero. Determinant of coefficient matrix in this case will be a Jacobian determinant, which is already provided to be non-zero. Hence, the system will possess a trivial solution. Trivial solution means it's a zero solution. Zero solution means the variable FRC minus YR is 0, proving YR is equal to FRC. proving coordinate wise equality of the two vectors y and f of c, hence y is equals to f of c. But we have started with the vector y in t, proving y is equals to f of c implies y is in f of b. Finally, it proves t is equals to f of b, hence f of b contains an open ball p with a center at f of a. And hence it is a proof of our second theorem in this unit number 4. If you have any difficulty, please unmute yourself and you can ask me. Already we are out of the time. Yes, you have any doubts on this or not?
No, ma'am.
Good. So let me stop for today. We will take the next theorem in the next lecture. Thank you for being with me.